Today's tech topic is about connecting printers. It's not so much about fixing printer problems, it's more making sure we understand how our printers connect to our devices and how our devices connect to printers so that we can understand them better and maybe diagnose issues when they're happening and understand the differences between different types of systems that are out there. The agenda is going to focus on connections, and we're going to talk about something called printer drivers. Then I'm going to show you screen sharing settings to see how both your Mac today and your iPhone will work with printers on your network. The first thing about being able to connect to a printer is your computer or your phone or your tablet has to find it, but that's only part of the connection. The other part of the connection is the ability to understand the printer, to be able to send and receive information. Your printer sends information to your computer or your device and your network, and your device sends information not only when it prints something, but it also has to understand the settings on your device. Some printers have duplex, printers have different size paper, some printers can scan. So that's that understanding part, that language that has to be communicated in addition to finding it in the first place. So the finding part is generally done with a cable or over a Wi-Fi network. If your computer or iPhone or PC or other devices on the same network as a printer, you can find it. Otherwise, you can use a USB cable and plug your printer directly into your computer. Understanding is in the software part. That's where printer drivers, and I'll explain what they are, and printer applications. A lot of manufacturers have applications that they ask you to download and install. And the reason is that they give you access to all the features that might be available in that printer, things where you can maybe check the ink level and other things like that possible, and maybe scan photos more efficiently. But that's a software part of it. So there's these two parts of connecting a peripheral, and anything you connect up to your computer is considered a peripheral, whether it's a speaker or a microphone or a webcam or an external keyboard. These are all peripherals, and sometimes they're very simple, but there's always a piece of software called a driver that is built into your computer or has to be downloaded so that it can understand how to communicate with that microphone, that speaker, that keyboard, the printer, other devices. There are printer connections that involve a cable. Most printers come with the ability for you to plug a cable into it. Most of them are USB. There are many older styles of cables. And there's also a Wi-Fi connection that most printers now. It used to be many years ago that Wi-Fi was only available in more expensive printers, but now even budget economical printers have the ability to connect up to Wi-Fi networks. And when it connects up to Wi-Fi, it's a little bit different. So let's take a look at the cable connection first and see what happens here. You can connect a wire to your computer, and we'll talk about what happens when you plug it in. But usually your printer will automatically recognize a printer when you plug it in. But what about your smartphone? There is literally no way intended for you to plug your smartphone into a printer. In fact, your smartphone really isn't designed to plug into too many things. And so there's no connection for it, and you really can't use it with a wired connection. So you've got to go wireless. And that's one thing that's made wireless connections on printers more popular. So with wireless connections, you have another component in your home or office that comes into play, and that's your home office router that creates the network. So your printer and your tablet and your phone and your computer and etc. all connect up to the router, and the router communicates to the printer. and your computer communicates to the router, but it knows to send a message to the printer if it's connected correctly. Modern printers connect very, very easily, much more easily than older ones do on Wi-Fi. They often have apps that come from the manufacturer that make it really easy to recognize the printer. And Apple has some unique features that make it possible to connect up to printers as well. So you can print from your iPhone or your iPad wirelessly. You don't need to have a wired connection. The part that makes the understanding possible is this thing called a printer driver. It's software, and it exists inside of your operating system, but it can also be downloaded, but it understands the printer features. It knows how to communicate with your specific printer, and it knows how to recognize if your printer has the capability of doing things in color or just black and white, or whether it can do two-sided or one-sided, so that you will have options when you go to print that give you the ability to select and modify those features on your printer along with the software driver that comes with it. And sometimes they're, as I mentioned, they're part of the operating system, so they're built in. Sometimes they might be downloaded from the manufacturer of your computer, but most of the time, Apple and iPhones and Macs have built-in drivers. Sometimes it might involve a download, but it's very quick. And Windows sometimes might have a download as well from Microsoft as well. But there's also manufacturer software. You don't need to really install the manufacturer software in order to just do printing, but usually the Apple driver that's built into the Mac or iPhone or iPad, they'll understand the features of your printer without needing to download and install any manufacturer software. But the manufacturers want you to install it because they monitor more things for you and may offer some additional features like the ability to order print cartridges when you need them more readily. The software connection involves the operating system. The operating system is this big piece of software, and it makes it possible for you to do everything with your device. It gives you a screen, it gives you the ability to recognize keyboard strokes, it gives you the ability to connect to the internet. It might give you a few applications like Safari and Notes, but its main job is to make sure that that computer can do things for you when you want to run an application on it. And the printer exists as a peripheral. It is outside of the operating system. It is a separate device that's not included with the operating system. There's a part of the operating system called a printer driver. Actually, every piece of hardware in the operating system has a little piece of software called a driver that enables the software to communicate with the hardware. There's a trackpad driver, there's a mouse driver, there's a microphone driver. So there's all these little pieces of the operating system that we take for granted, but it makes it possible for the operating system to communicate with a particular piece of hardware, whether it's internal, like say a keyboard on a built-in Mac or the touch screen on your iPhone, but also to an external device like a printer. So that printer driver is really important in terms of being able to give it. Now, the reason it's better to have it in the operating system, you could have an application, and they used to have them many years ago, where every application had to have its own printing function built into the software application. So that means people like Microsoft and Adobe and Lotus 123 and other types of applications, they used to have to build their own print functions into their applications. Because the printer driver is part of the operating system and it runs in the operating system, or even if you download the manufacturer's one for the operating system, every application that runs in the operating system can take advantage of the print function without needing to have its own separate software to do it. So that's made computers really, really flexible. So once you install a printer, and it's working right, it should work with all of your applications because it's managed by the operating system at that point. When you have a document, whether it's in Word or Pages or a note or something else, and you go to print, you say, I want to print from here, and the print menu will usually show up the same no matter what application you use, because you're really using the operating system function to send something to the printer. And when you click print, the operating system and the printer driver take care of sending that document over to the printer so that you can get it out of the printer in the printer tray. So that's how a task takes place. And these typically happen in the background so that you can go off and do other work while you're waiting for something to print. You don't have to stop your computer and wait for something to print and then go back to do it. Your operating system is capable of multitasking so it can print and you can browse the web at the same time, as an example. Apple's got a couple of unique printing technologies, and this is where a lot of people get confused or get lost or don't understand why their printer doesn't really work that well. Apple has a built-in technology called AirPrint, and they have a built-in technology called Bonjour. And let's talk about them. AirPrint gives you the ability in your Mac, and your iPad, and your iPhone to not install any other software. It includes drivers for all the AirPrint capable printers. Apple licenses the AirPrint software to printer companies. They install it in their printer, and if they have it installed in their printer, there is no need for any other software because your Apple device will recognize an AirPrint printer automatically. You may have to add the printer, but it'll recognize it on the network very easily. But that printer has to be AirPrint enabled. If you go to buy a printer that's not AirPrint, which maybe 5, 7 years ago, there were a lot of printers that were a choice between getting a model that had AirPrint or getting a model that didn't have AirPrint. Now, almost all printers have AirPrint capability, but you still might find one that doesn't. And Apple actually has a website where you can go and find app printers that use AirPrint that are compatible with Apple AirPrint. So it's easy to do. It is required for iPad and iPhone printing because there is no way you can plug that printer into your device. With a Mac, you can avoid using AirPrint by using the plug, and it'll use the software driver, that's necessary to use it. But so you don't necessarily need the wireless connection. But AirPrint includes drivers for hundreds and hundreds of different printers, and Apple supports these drivers. They're part of the Mac OS and the iOS and the iPad OS. There's another technology called Bonjour. It's built into Macs, iPads, and iPhones. It is a discovery tool. It's actually Apple's own networking technology that establishes a network connection between an AirPrint capable printer and your Mac or your iPhone or your iPad. So it actually creates its own network that, you have Wi-Fi, but you don't need to have any other kind of capability. Apple recognizes things that are on Bonjour because they send a message that Apple's operating systems will understand. So if your printer has AirPrint, it has Bonjour built in. Bonjour is the networking part, the communications part, whereas AirPrint is the complete printer driver part. So these two technologies are provided by Apple. And what a lot of people end up with is they end up with a printer that may not have AirPrint or Bonjour, or they end up with a printer that may not be getting updated to the latest versions any longer. And so lots of printer companies go through end of life on their printer updates, and so they may not support that printer after a while also. So in Macs, you've got the ability to look at Wi-Fi printers. So they're on the same Wi-Fi network. Your Mac will find them. You basically open system settings. I'm going to walk you through this. printers and scanners, and you add a printer with the plus sign. If you see a printer on there that you don't use, you can hit the minus sign. You don't need that printer function anymore. And you want to look for a printer. It'll be listed as either a Bonjour or an AirPrint printer. If you plug a printer in with a USB cable, you may not see it with Bonjour AirPrint. It may just be a direct cable driver. But if you're doing it over Wi-Fi, you'll definitely see either Bonjour or AirPrint. Then you just select that printer and click on the Add button, and your printer is installed. Then when you go to print anything, your Apple menu on your Apple system will include all the features for that particular printer. When you use a cable with USB, it does what's called auto detect. You can plug the cable into your Mac, and the printer and Mac OS will try to auto detect it. If it doesn't work, unplug the cable and plug it in again, and you might be able to download a Mac printer driver from the manufacturer. If you go to the manufacturer's website, they might still have a manual printer driver, in which case you should be able to print at that point. But if there's no printer driver available from, say, HP or Epson or Brother or Canon, and your printer doesn't get auto recognized by your Mac, you're going to have trouble using that printer. And lots of times, the simplest solution is to buy a new printer and save yourself hours of grief and technical support problems. iOS is different. iOS printing is done with the share icon. Whenever you see any kind of application and you want to share something and you tap the share icon, it has to be an AirPrint enabled printer to work with an iPad or an iPhone. And from any app, you tap that share icon, scroll to find print as an option. You might need to tap it once to make sure it recognizes the printer on your network with Bonjour. And then once it does, it'll remember that you've used that printer and let you use it again without having to automatically detect it. But Bonjour is going to detect the printer and make sure that it's going to work with your iPhone or iPad. And you just tap the print button to print. So that's how easy it is to do. So now you see my system settings here. I'm going to go to Add Printer, Scanner, or Fax. And it brings up a pop-up menu. Okay. It found this printer, Bonjour multifunction. It also found exactly the same printer as an IP address printer. So the printer is on my Wi-Fi network, and my Mac understands that it can print to that. But if you have a choice of Bonjour or AirPrint, that's the one you want to pick. And you would click on selecting it, and you would simply give it a name. If you wanted to rename it, I already have it installed, and you just click Add, and it'll add that to the network. So you can see how easy it is to add a printer to the network, no matter what you got. As long as it's AirPrint capable, your Mac will go off and find it whenever you click on Add Printer, Scanner, or Fax. So that's a Mac setup. The main thing is to make sure your printer is AirPrint capable. And if you don't have an AirPrint printer and you use both a Mac and an iPhone, I would recommend upgrading your printer and getting a newer model. My home screen, I can go to any application, but if I don't have to pre-install the printer driver on my phone. If I go to settings, I can go down to printer here, but I usually won't see printer here. You usually don't see a print function in these settings because it's built in to the applications themselves when you actually want to go and print. So unlike a Mac, it's a little bit different. So this is a note I have that I just have opened up, and there's my share icon. If I tap on the share icon, I have a lot of options. I can send a copy. I can make sure I can share it with people. I can scroll up. I can open in pages. But there's my print function here. So I didn't have to pre-install a printer. If I tap on print, it pulls up, and I've used this printer before, so it automatically filled it in. But if I tap this, it gives me the ability to look for known printers. So if I go to a friend's house and I'm on their Wi-Fi network and they have an AirPrint printer and I've used it before, it will pop up automatically printers that are available. If I can show a lot of information, it actually tells me supply levels because the printer information is a part of what it remembers when it looks at the print functions. There are ability to change copies, color, double-sided. The software function in my iPhone understands those things, and I just have to tap the print button, and if all things work okay, you'll hear the print job coming out from behind me in just a second. There we go. So it's just printing out that page for me. All you do is go in whatever application you want and go to the print function, and that will the share, then print, and it'll recognize your printer as long as you've got an AirPrint printer on your Wi-Fi network. They have to be on the same Wi-Fi network, has to be AirPrint capable. So it makes it really easy to work with that. But a lot of people don't realize that AirPrint is something that's necessary to really have, and it makes it much easier to connect it to a Mac when you have a Mac that you're looking at. I'm going to find that page for Apple AirPrint printers. This is just supportapple.com. AirPrint tells you how to use it, connecting it to your Wi-Fi, printing from your iPhone or iPad, or printing from Mac. They're a little bit different. And then it lists all of the AirPrint devices that are supported. And you can see in the scroll bar here, this is a pretty long list. If you just wanted to search for one, you can find out. When you're looking at a USB-only device, these let you print or scan without having to install drivers, but they do require a USB connection in order to function, but they don't need any manufacturer software to be installed. So anyway, that just kind of sums up what I wanted to tell you about Apple printing. Thank you all for being patient with me as I go through the demonstrations. Again, thanks for attending my tech topic, and we'll see you at this other one soon.